Hi, I'm Paul Arthur. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Stats Canada figures show that Canada is in a technical recession. The debate is, how concerned should we be? Plus, Conservative senators are concerned over reports that hundreds of thousands of citizen postcards against Bill C-9 were intentionally withheld from reaching their offices. And the Alberta Federation of Labour staged a province-wide day of action today with protests targeting UCP government policies.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News.
Thanks for joining us. Statistics Canada says the country slipped into a technical recession in the first quarter as the economy stalled. The agency says real gross domestic product by expenditure was essentially unchanged on a quarter-over-quarter basis. Converting that to an annualized rate magnifies the quarterly changes and results in a decline of 0.1% for the quarter, a figure most economists pay close attention to. Despite 2 quarters in a row of negative growth, meeting the bar for a technical recession, many economists also gauge the breadth and depth of a downturn before declaring a formal recession. TD Bank economist Mark Carney says the first quarter dip was so marginal, it's not the kind of contraction worth sounding the alarm over. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre is seeing it differently, though. He had this to say earlier today at a press conference on Parliament Hill.
I'm just going to be very blunt, because this is the fact. Mark Carney is now the only leader in the G7 to have plunged his economy into recession. He's been Prime Minister for 4 quarters now. The economy has shrunk in 3 of those quarters. He's the only G7 leader who can say that. The economy is smaller today than when Mark Carney became Prime Minister a year ago. He's the only G7 leader who can say that. Mr. Carney, if it really is global factors and tariffs that have given Canada the only recession in the G7, why have France, Italy, Japan, Germany, the United Kingdom, and the United States all avoided a recession? They all have the same tariffs and the same global factors, yet none of them, not one, is in recession. Only Mark Carney has the distinction of leading his country into a recession.
Prime Minister Carney met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi today in Ottawa. Carney said the relationship between the two nations is in need of a reset. Wang also spent time with Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand as part of his 3-day trip to Canada. Anand says Canada aims to increase exports to China by 50% by 2030, while safeguarding Canada's economic and national security interests and values. Few details of the meetings have been released so far, to which opposition leader Pierre Poilievre responded.
Mr. Carney has decided to protect the minister from Beijing by not allowing media to enter the room and only to release state photography of the meeting. That's how things are done in Beijing. And now Mark Carney is importing those methods here. Even one Liberal commentator on CBC, Althea Raj, said that Mark Carney has an authoritarian streak. But I would remind him that he's supposed to work for Canadians, not for Beijing, not for Brookfield and its Chinese investments. And he should open up and actually take questions from the media, like I'm doing here today.
Federal Bill C-9, the Combating Hate Act, is a contentious piece of legislation that amends the criminal code regarding hate propaganda. Opponents are concerned about the bill's removal of the in good faith religious exemption, potentially leaving clergy open to being prosecuted for comments that could be interpreted by others as being hateful. A faith-based advocacy group called For My Canada has been organizing a mass mail campaign which has seen 200,000 individual Canadians sending postcards to senators expressing concern over Bill C-9. However, it was discovered this week that senators only received a handful of the postcards, while the vast majority of the cards were locked away in a storage unit in Gatineau.
As I said, I got 30, only one was from Saskatchewan. And mail to parliamentarians has been postage-free for decades because we have a responsibility to listen to the views of Canadians on issues we vote on here. Why is the magnitude of this campaign being downplayed to senators? We received no details about the 10,000 identical ones. And why are these cards being held where they are not accessible? We received no information previously about the accessibility of it, not accessible to senators or our office staff.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Ricardo Lafreda.
Senator Lafreda, this decision was not made to silence anyone or diminish the importance of public participation in the democratic process.
We're talking about the ability for you and I and ministers across the nation, pastors, leaders, to preach the whole Word of God without fear of prosecution, and for Canadians to express their sincerely held faith beliefs on a variety of matters that may or may not be culturally, cultural hot potatoes, for your ability to express your sincerely held faith beliefs without fear of being charged criminally.
Senator Lafreda says the postcards were stored away for efficiency reasons to keep the mail system operational. Faitine Grzeski says the grassroots campaign will continue to lobby senators with postcards as well as phone calls until the bill is put to the final vote. An Ontario man accused of selling deadly substances online to people at risk of self-harm in more than 40 countries has entered a guilty plea in court. Kenneth Law pleaded guilty to 14 counts of aiding suicide today. He was set to stand trial last month on these charges, as well as 14 counts of first-degree murder. Suspected of being linked to as many as 147 deaths around the world, the court heard today the Crown plans to withdraw the murder charges after Law is sentenced, with a hearing expected this fall. The plea bargain has frustrated families of the victims, some of whom are calling for greater systemic accountability and more severe penalties that would adequately reflect the global scale of the tragedies. U.S. President Donald Trump stated in a social media post today that the American blockade on ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz will now be lifted. This announcement came ahead of today's White House Situation Room meeting with his advisors regarding a deal to extend the ceasefire by 60 days. He says he's looking to make a final determination on the matter after reports that U.S. and Iranian negotiators had come to terms on a tentative agreement. Global markets responded positively after Trump's post, and oil prices eased slightly as well. Drones made in Canada could soon be headed to the battlefield in Ukraine. The defense ministers of both countries signed an agreement on the margins of the CanSec trade show in Ottawa this week to support the co-production of drones. National Defence says the drones will be made by Ukrainian company Airlogics and Canada drone maker Sentinel R&D. Canada and Ukraine signed a letter of intent last fall to co-produce defense technology in both countries. Across the province today, large rallies were held as the Alberta Federation of Labour held its day of protest as part of their Fight Back Now campaign to push back against UCP government policies. The protests covered 15 different communities, including a large gathering here in Lethbridge. People with their own personal concerns took to Galt Gardens, saying they feel they have a lack of representation in their communities.
Honestly, I'm a university student myself, and so seeing how the UCP handled the teacher strike that happened this past October was really disheartening, and I think that everyone deserves a chance to express themselves as well, so coming out just to support in any way I can is the biggest thing I can do.
Our government and certainly the UCP have affected so many segments on things that they weren't on their agenda, and yet they've gone ahead with.
Problems in every sector, and what have they done for us? Nothing. Everything is just going down into the toilet because of them, and they need to leave. They were done.
I talked to one individual that's on AISH, and he's getting moved to ADAP, and he said he was freaking out and had an emotional breakdown. And so he said to me, just keep doing the advocacy you're doing. And so it's really important that we take a strong stance against this government and have our voices heard.
The Alberta Federation of Labour says about 6,000 people attended this morning's rally in Edmonton, while hundreds participated in Lethbridge, Red Deer and Medicine Hat. Calgary is expected to see large numbers this evening as well. Officials say people visiting Banff National Park in the coming days ought to be careful about potential flooding. RCMP and Parks Canada say many rivers and streams in the national park are flowing at higher than normal levels because of high snowpack, warm temperatures, and rain. They say these conditions are expected to continue over the weekend and into Monday. Officials say some low-lying areas are experiencing nuisance flooding and that some trails and day-use areas may be temporarily closed. A non-surgical weight loss procedure is now available at Edmonton's Royal Alexandra Hospital. Albertans dealing with obesity can now access a new publicly paid-for procedure that would see their stomach stitched up from the inside.
What we do here is we keep everything in and we just suture the stomach, so on the inside it looks the same. It's still a tube, a small tube, but we suture everything. We don't take anything in and we don't take anything out. And this is just suture, so you can cut it out. It's completely reversible and it's incisionless. So this is the future of bariatric surgery. It's incisionless. So if you look at a belly, there's not one incision. So most patients stay about 23 hours after surgery and they have pain, so they use Tylenol 3s, codeine. But with this, patients have no pain because it's all on the inside. So they can come in the morning and leave the same day with no incisions, and they've had bariatric surgery, which is pretty incredible.
When we started this technology, we were both independently looking at this technology, both for bariatric surgery and other applications. We are one of the first sites in Canada to have this technology available to us. We started working together, particularly in the bariatric realm. As a bariatric surgeon and an advanced endoscopist, we bring two different perspectives and two sets of expertise, but that are very much able to work together to make sure that we have optimal patient outcomes.
If you are a member of the Edmonton Bariatric Specialty Clinic, then you are a candidate for this procedure. Generally, I think the patients that do the best are the patients who have had GLP-1, some sort of one of those anti-obesity medications, and have had a good response. So you're part of our clinic, you've had a good response to medications, then you'd be eligible for this. There's no private options in Alberta, which is actually really nice, because if you need the service, you can get it without worrying about your checkbook.
It's a major battle to try and keep weight off, and so anything that can help with that is huge. And and it's the long-term health benefits are obviously fantastic and better for the medical system too, if I'm dropping off all the pills that I've taken and just feeling better.
An expected large-scale mixed-use development has now broken ground in West Lethbridge. The Core Crossing project is intended to drastically expand West Side services in commercial, retail, and residential areas. The city held a groundbreaking ceremony on Thursday to mark one of the city's largest projects, with an estimated building cost of $300 million. Key additions will include the West Side First Hotel, plus a 450-unit residential development from Cedar Ridge Homes.
It's incredibly exciting for us to be a part of a project of this scale right here in Lethbridge. It's more than about housing. Core Crossings is about bringing this entire community together and having a place for people to live, shop, work, their kids to go to school, and a place to connect with friends and family, all right here in West Lethbridge. Housing is a huge issue in Lethbridge, and we need a lot more housing, and it has to be affordable housing. So we are going to be building some apartment buildings, so they're actually 4-story buildings, as well as there's going to be some fourplexes, and the plans continue. It takes a lot of time to develop these. You can live here, you can work here, your kids can go to school. You don't even have to leave this community, so I think that's really big for West Lethbridge.
Phase 1 of the project is expected to finish by next year, with over 100 residential units completed. Meanwhile, Phase 2 of the nearby Crossings Commercial District will have tenants take possession of units by this fall. As the City of Lethbridge expands pedestrian safety measures across more intersections, officials are introducing new crosswalk signals designed to give pedestrians a head start before vehicles receive a green light. The initiative aims to improve visibility, reduce conflicts between drivers and pedestrians, and make intersections safer for everyone using the roads.
The main idea is to make sure that pedestrians are more visible, and so giving them a head start everybody knows that now they're in the crosswalk, so the vehicles can actually see them. Since 2014, we actually started implementing them slow, monitoring them, and now we're really convinced. And so over the city where we have increased high volume of left turns and more pedestrians, those are the places that we want to implement this to make it safer. Everywhere where there's and/or right turn movements and pedestrians. So Mayor McGrath Drive from south to north, probably almost every intersection we'll look at there. There's busy intersections or roads like Stafford and University Drive. Those are the ones that we're going to target next. This is a different safety feature. They call it permissive green lights for turns, and then that way, you know, they're both pedestrians and vehicles come into the intersection, and they got to see each other to make sure that they react properly. If somebody's in the crosswalk, you have to stop for sure, and you have to give them the right of way before you can proceed.
Brumman says this timing strategy is used similarly in many other cities in Canada and the U.S.
I'm Sean Haney with realagriculture.com. Canada's agricultural sector officially breached a historic $100 billion milestone in farm cash receipts. But according to fresh StatsCan data, surging input costs and soft grain markets kept a tight lid on overall profitability. It dragged down national realized net farm income down to $8.3 billion. Beneath that surface lies a massive sectoral divide. Livestock revenues surged over 13%, driven by a 22% explosion in cattle receipts. However, the crop side, it's a different story altogether. It's very, very different. Despite record yields, total crop receipts were entirely flat, with Saskatchewan and Alberta taking the biggest hits as trade restrictions dragged canola revenues down more than 6%. Meanwhile, operating expenses climbed past $83 billion, fueled by a historic 39% spike in animal replacement costs. With total expenses now devouring 92% of cash receipts, margins on the prairies are the tightest they've been since 2019. For Bridge City News, I'm Sean Haney with realagriculture.com.
Statistics Canada says economic growth stalled in the first quarter, leading to a second consecutive decline in real gross domestic product. That meets some definitions for technical recession. However, not all economists are convinced the label is necessary. With more is Craig Lord from the Canadian Press.
Statistics Canada says that the Canadian economy shrank very marginally in the first quarter of the year. Now, for some economists and economic watchers, that's raising fears of a technical recession, because in the fourth quarter of last year, we also saw the economy shrink. So this meets that technical bar of 2 consecutive quarters where GDP is just not growing. Now, it was such a marginal decrease that on a quarter-to-quarter basis, StatCan even just called it flat. There was no growth. But when you magnify these figures, stretch them out into annualized rates, which is what economists, what the Bank of Canada tends to pay the most attention to, you do see a 0.1% decline in real GDP. Now, again, this is distorted in many ways. March saw a decline in real GDP, and so did last October. But in the middle, those 4 months, we had GDP flat or on the rise. So it's very difficult to say that Canada's economy has been shrinking for 2 consecutive quarters or for more than a year. That said, Canada's economy is not firing on all cylinders, according to most economists. We've seen business investment trail for the past 5 quarters, and the economy is certainly being dragged down by U.S. tariffs, really hampering the steel and aluminum industries here in Canada. So whether you call it a technical recession or not, this was not a pretty picture for Canada's economy, the Statistics Canada released on May 29th.
Transport Canada says Canadians have claimed more than $122 million in federal subsidies for new electric vehicles since Ottawa reintroduced its rebate program in February. A database on the new electric vehicle affordability program showed more than 24,000 claims in the first 2.5 months. The Canadian Auto Dealers Association says many dealerships still have not been reimbursed, though, under the new program. A spokesperson says some car dealers are still waiting for more than $200,000 in rebates to be paid out. And now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 251 points on the day to 34,769. The Dow was up 363 to 51,032. The S&P 500 was up 16 to 7580, and the Nasdaq was up 55 points to finish at 26,972. West Texas Intermediate oil was down $1.04 to 87.85 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 1 cent to 3.27 US. Gold was up 43.59 to 45.3909 US an ounce, and silver was down 31 cents to 75.27 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.60 per bushel. Barley is at $6.97. Canola is at $17.50, and corn is at $7.67 per bushel. Live cattle June contract was down $1.50 to $248.25. Feeder cattle August contract was down $4.60 to $348.42. Lean hogs June contract was down $1.12 to $95.85. And the Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 72.50 US.
Recapping one of today's top stories, Statistics Canada says the country slipped into technical recession in the first quarter as the economy stalled. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre pounced on the report, placing blame on Prime Minister Carney for the recession. However, a number of economists say the first quarter dip was marginal and is not the kind of contraction worth sounding the alarm over. Well, Canada used to be a place where you didn't have to worry about looking over your shoulder when voicing an opinion that might be controversial. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore, as we are increasingly seeing claims of hate speech going to human rights tribunals with big wins for the accusers. Where is Canada headed in this department? Well, Luke Nielsen from the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms joins me to chat about that, coming right up. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca, and you can also visit our website or our YouTube channel anytime to check out more of our content as well as our poll questions.